Hello, GenRight Nation. We have got a great show for you to talk about gas tanks, and we've got a lot of stuff here. Andrew's going to join me today just to keep it lively. And let's see, one of the things I wanted to talk about was gas tanks were GenRight's first product, right?
Yep.
This was one of those things where it was born out of my own necessity. I put a bigger rear axle in, and lo and behold,
Yeah.
and back then the answer was shorten the wheelbase. And I'm like, that's crazy talk. Like, why would you do that? So anyways, we ended up not only solving the problem, but then being able to stretch the wheelbase, because obviously if you put a bigger axle in, you want to go with a bigger tire. So lots of good stuff there. So today we make these for the CJ, the YJ, the TJ, the LJ, the XJ, the JK, and the JL. So it's 30 different models across all those platforms, including some behind the seat tanks that we make that are kind of universal. So we can talk about all that stuff today. And what separates us from anybody else who's tried to dabble in this market, we have it completely dialed where it ties back in with your evap system and everything, so you don't get any check engine lights. So you're probably asking yourself, okay, Tony, you know, that's great and all, but why would I want one? Well, let me tell you why. First off, we make a model like that carries more fuel, right? So you can carry 5 extra gallons, 10 extra gallons, depending on what model you get. You can carry a lot more fuel, so you're not having to mess around with those jerry cans and spilling gas everywhere. It's right there, down low, under a nice skid plate. The next reason would be that somebody like Alfie did it was so that they could go with a triangulated 4-link. And, you know, with our JK or JL, they've got a side saddle tank that's right in the way of you doing anything cool. So you got to get rid of that tank, move it to the back, of which we make a nice tank for that. In fact, it might be that one. You know, that solves that problem. Now you've gotten it out of the middle, you get more ground clearance, and you can do a 4-link.
Well, real quick on top of that, a lot of guys that are going with bigger axles in their JK and JL. I have family that have done this. The drive shaft and the pinion will also swing into the gas tank. And they go to a bigger rear axle.
That's right. Yeah, you start getting more travel, like, because you got to get rid of that track bar. That's what's doing it. Then, you know, if you're in not a 4-door, then it's all about stretching the wheelbase. So we make all these tanks that allow you to stretch the wheelbase even more so that you can run a bigger tire. All of those things are important. Then, on a lot of these gas tanks, we give you 1 extra inch of ground clearance, and if you've converted to a V8 or electronic fuel injection, you can do an in-tank pump. So on the older Jeeps that didn't come with that, you can convert that over. So there's a bunch of different reasons, in addition to looking cool and being the latest and greatest. Oh, and by the way, I'm not mentioning that your factory steel tank on an older Jeep was all rusty and nasty, or your plastic tank that your Jeep came with got old and brittle and cracked, right? Those are, like, if that's happened, do not replace it with another one. Get one of these. Get an aluminum tank, and that's the last you'll worry about it. So that kind of kicks it off, right?
Sure.
So as usual, if you guys have any questions and comments, type them in. If I get any off-topic questions, they're going to the end of the show. We'll answer those at the end. Okay. Let's see. Featured product obviously is gas tanks today, and there we go. So this is a aluminum gas tank in the skid, a powder coated. All of our skids come powder coated with a stainless steel strap, the vent valves, the whole system put together. So this is a plug and play installation for you. And that's going to be the big difference between us and everybody else.
Also, I mean, look at the quality of like the welds. I mean, we can look at this tank.
Yeah.
I'm sure this tank was pulled from Kenny Station.
Yeah, just right out of production.
Okay.
And yeah, I didn't even like look at it careful. I know Jeff was over here looking at this one, and he was just going, look at that. Like, nobody does welds like that. That is unbelievably beautiful.
Well, it's got to be like that because we pressure test every single tank for a specific amount of time to ensure that every single tank that leaves here does not leak.
That's right.
So-
So what you got to understand is when we air test them, air is thinner than liquid, right? So it's going to, if there is a pinhole, it would leak. So we want to get that out of the way before it goes to the customer. Who knows where it's shipping to? Sometimes we ship to Alaska and out of the country. We don't need any problems.
Right,
So
exactly.
we want it to be perfect. And by the way, that skid plate, there's a foam liner between the tank and the skid, so that even if you bang the skid plate, there's something in there to absorb that. That we do use a marine grade of aluminum, so that will also flex to a certain degree. So especially if you look under mine or Jamie's, we've maxed that out. Okay, so we're going to start off with, we're going to go through all the different models. TJ and LJ are very similar, so we're going to cover both those at the same time. So if you can zoom in on that, yep. So EXT is our 4 to 5 inch stretch. Comp, you're getting 6 to 7. Alien, 8 to 9. Extended range, where you're getting 5 extra gallons, or the Safari, which is 11 extra gallons. That one's for the LJ only, and it requires a special mounting plate.
Right. And on top of that, these numbers of stretch amounts, that's specific to the TJ. If you have an LJ like I do, you can actually cut out, there's a faux cross member directly in front of like the rear bumper plate. You can take that out. We have a bracket that helps you relocate that we'll get to, and you'll add 5 more inches to each one of these numbers.
Yeah, and I think we have a picture of that too.
Okay, cool.
That faux setup. Okay, so this is probably the most common, right? Like, hey, I got some weird axle I pulled out of a junkyard, like what can I get away with? So when we rate it for a stretch, we talk about, a Curry 70. That's what we do all day long. And you can see that you actually get the most with that axle versus a 14 volt or a Pro Rock 80 or a Sterling. Those seem to be the popular axles people are going to. So can they see that pretty good? Mm-hmm. Any questions so far?
Lots of questions.
Oh, on topic?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Esther asked, should we replace the fuel pump when we install a new tank, even if the pump hasn't had any issues?
Yeah, so that's a common question. So my answer on that would be, you got the whole thing apart.
Right.
There's no time like the present. And I actually pulled a fuel pump. By the way, every fuel pump out there is made by Bosch or Walboro. So those are the only 2 companies that make fuel pumps, and that's the deal. You can buy just the pump, okay? Yeah, it takes a little more to take it apart out of a TJ or a JK unit, but it is possible to just replace the pump, or you just get a whole new module and it's plug and play, pretty easy. We also have recommendations for higher volume and higher pressure if you're running a V8 with a current higher pressure system.
From like Aeromotive.
Aeromotive or even the Walboro unit. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So.
Andrew Gardner asked, are you going to make any other size tanks for the JLU?
That's a good question. I mean, those have really just started to sell. Mm-hmm. So we offer one for a standard JL frame, stock style, and then we offer the one for our EXS. They're both pretty equal in capacity, and I guess we could add more and take away ground clearance or do something like that.
Right, because with the like the previous model with the JK, we decided that losing 2 inches of ground clearance is not a deal breaker, especially when you're gaining that breakover. I always tell my customers, if you're worried about ground clearance on the behind the rear axle, think of all the stuff you just drove through, your front diff, your rear diff, your drive shafts. That extra 2 inches of lost ground clearance at the back of the Jeep is not going to be detrimental to your ability to get through the
and it's
trail.
got a great skid plate that you're just going to ramp off of, so like not something to worry about. Yeah, and by the way, can they see this pretty good right here?
Yeah.
Look at how tight that is. This is moved back 6 inches. I mean, that's awesome. We have absolutely maximized the entire shape on this. So, yeah, this is good stuff for sure.
Lots of questions.
Okay, more?
How do you make gas tanks but Titan fuel tanks can only make diesel tanks? Is it that these are listed as off-road use only and theirs had to pass on-road regulations?
So these are stock tank replacements. Okay, when you're doing the same size or smaller, the regulations, the requirements are different. What they're doing is adding like double the capacity,
Right.
and that's a completely different requirement. So, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're reusing all of the evap systems. So we're reusing the factory fuel pump, all the evap, retying into everything that, and even the factory filler hoses. Like all of that stuff plays a part in that and is super important.
Right.
Okay, Two Feather Channel asks, JLUR, what about the extension lines to the gas tank's new location? Do you offer that or know where we can get it?
Yeah, we offer that. It's a pre-made plug-and-play unit. So it's actually got the male and female plug. And as we go forward, like with the JL, we're doing a better job in making that more and more plug-and-play. And by the way, you know, when you put one of our tanks in, you've got to put in one of these cover plates in the back because you're going to take out that little depression in the floor. So we give you a cover plate. That's part of the tank kit. And again, just the more complete solution, right?
Right.
So,
More questions.
Okay.
If Jamie Kahn Jr. asks, if I'm doing this in stages for a 4-door JK, will the gas tank relocation work with Elite or does it have a separate tank?
So yeah, I'll answer that. So our 20 and our 25 gallon tank are set up to work with, you know, shocks in the stock location, a track bar, generally most of the other suspension systems that are already out there. The 36 gallon tank is Elite specific. The reason why it's so much extra capacity is because we're not worried about inboard shocks, coil springs, a track bar. There's a cross member that it becomes irrelevant when
yeah, you actually take out that
exactly.
whole cross member.
So
And I've got a picture of that in here too.
okay, yeah.
So we can touch on that as we get further
Right.
along.
So yeah, your options would be the 20 or the 25 gallon tank. So it's the GST 8002 or the GST 8003, and both those come with aluminum skids
And you
or
can
steel.
use those with the Elite,
Right.
or you can upgrade to the 36 gallon tank
Right.
once you get the Elite. So
Okay, Mark Lawrence said, I'm building my 04 LJ Tracer with 26 gallon tank. I had to order the 06 factory fuel pump assembly. Will the 4-wire plug work from 04 to 06? Are they the same electrical plug?
So he will have to buy. There's a pigtail. It'll wire. He just needs to put the different plug on there, and it will wire right up at that point. Just plugs right in.
it's like an adapter.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Angel Muni said 2010 JK 2-door, currently running a Synergy crossmember coilover mount in the rear. Will the tank fit?
It should, but man, like guys, you got to understand. There's no way for us to cross-reference all these.
He says
wild
he's stretched
companies.
8 inches, if
Yeah,
that helps.
You know,
So our stretch tank is good for about 6 inches. So as far as the sizing, I don't think that'll work. His only option would be one of our BST 2100-2s.
and on every single one of our, if you go to our website, hold that.
Oh, sure.
If you go to our website, in the pictures, one of the drawings or pictures is a drawing of the actual tank. So you can see all the dimensions right there. And so, you know, you can get under your Jeep and take some measurements and see if, you know, something looks like it'll fit.
Right. Because we've had guys use TJ tanks in their JKs
Yeah.
because they needed a different size. So for him, getting any one of our TJ tanks for an 05 or newer will utilize the same pump.
Yes.
And then that way your ability to make it more plug and play is a lot easier.
Yeah, so that's that one
Right.
versus this one.
Sure,
Right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, at least 5 people have asked where your yellow hat is.
I know, I forgot it's out of the truck.
Let's see, Justin O'Brien. If using for off-road only and needing to get rid of emissions, what do you do with the evap lines from the motor and sensor from tank 06 LJ?
Okay, so this is the most common mistake people make. They want to omit the evap canister and all of the emission stuff. And what happens is that it seals off the tank. And now, you know, the fuel you're using, there's no air that can go in, or when you're filling the tank, there's no air that can escape. Like, guys, this whole thing needs to breathe. And part of what the Jeep is built to do is pull those fumes through a charcoal canister back into the intake.
Right. So you're not smelling it.
Right, none of that stuff. You know, in your garage, when you're driving, none of that. So you can't just seal that stuff off. Every single person that does that calls us and tells us, my Jeep's dying. Like, yeah, no wonder, dude. You just kinked everything off, you know?
Right.
So you can't do that.
And Carl asked, any issues from the inspector when you smog your Jeep?
It depends on where you live. It depends on, don't walk the guy back there and go, check out my new gas tank.
Right.
Shut up. Like, come on, man, have a brain.
So in California, which is going to be the most difficult as far as the tanks, like Tony said at the very, very beginning, these are stock replacement tanks. That was one of the most important things that we need to preach. The only tanks that actually need a carb certification are those oversized tanks, like that Titan company, and those are for diesel, and diesels are under a lot more stringent policies, believe it or not.
Requirements, yeah.
So our local smog guys, you know, star certified. He's like the guy that you want to go to when you get flagged for something. In Appendix G in the carb handbook, as long as it's a stock replacement tank, you haven't relocated it. So like our TJ tanks, those all go right in the stock location. As long as it's hooked up to the factory evap system, there's no need for a carb certification. That doesn't mean that they'll fail. That they won't fail you. There's guys out there that want to err on the side of caution, and they'll fail you for whatever. Like I almost got flagged for a different type of filter on the factory intake. So they're getting a lot more difficult to deal with. My suggestion, I hate saying it, if you're worried about it, just paint the thing black. Go drive it down a dirt road, and no one will be the
They'll
one.
never know the difference.
Yeah.
That's right. They only because they could see, you know, a little bit of silver from the top.
Right.
You paint it black, you know, with undercoat or flat black paint, and they'll never know.
But again, they're totally
Because
legal.
when they plug in, they can't tell. It's invisible.
Right.
We reused everything.
Right.
Yeah. So
Brandon Smith asked, on a JKU with a rear frame chop and rear anti-rocks, are all your tanks compatible?
Not with the frame. Well, so there's mods that need to happen to the mounting brackets, but I'm seeing a lot of guys go to our frame repair kit to put our tanks
yeah,
in, so they're not having to
we do
modify.
make that. Yeah. So we don't recommend chopping the frame, and you've taken away the rear mounts, so it's kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
The reality is, you know, when you're going to a big giant tire, your departure angle, everything's better.
Right.
You know, so I don't know. I raced KOH in my 4-door, and like the departure angle wasn't the issue.
Right.
So
Okay, VB Tom says 2006 LJR. I want to install the 23-gallon comp tank and access panel and move the tank to the rear. How precise do I need to be for the pump access panel? It looks big enough to eyeball.
yeah, so we've got one here.
Yeah, so you could do a little pilot hole. Obviously, we recommend to get your tank and do it all at the same time.
Yeah, and the range in this is big enough.
Yeah.
You know where this mounts up in the back.
So like on mine, now granted I have the 26 gallon, but it's shoved all the way back. This is as far back on the ribs as you can possibly get it in my Jeep. So I would say for him, he's going to put that in the same exact spot that I have mine.
Yep. Yep. So, and don't forget about this. If you're putting a tank in, you want an access plate for sure, because inevitably when the fuel pump gives out, it's full.
It's full.
Yeah.
And you're in the middle of nowhere.
And you're in the middle of nowhere.
Forrest Strong said, something I found to use your guys' XJ Cherokee gas tank in an older model with a return fuel line or to add a return is using a BoostWorks Engineering billet fuel pump module. It works for a TJ too.
Interesting. Never heard of them.
Yeah, I never heard of them, but that's
check it
great.
out.
Yeah.
And Heaven
It's
Guard
probably
asked if you
something
could
similar to
show
automotive.
the plate again.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Can you show that plate again?
This plate. Sure.
Yes.
I'll let you hold the top. Yeah, so this, what we did was we built this out of 3/16 steel, and it's got radiused edges here, so when you reach in, you're not like digging your arm into anything. This is also, because you're cutting out the floor in the cargo area, it's really strong. Like this is stronger than the rest of the floor, trust me. So we wanted to make sure that you could still stack toolboxes or whatever you wanted in the back and not worry about the structural integrity of the floor.
And one other thing with that, these recesses are for the ribs in the floor. so that this piece actually sits flush to the top of those ribs.
Yes.
So I
So
get
it's
a
not
lot of people
sticking out.
asking about like where to cut and whatnot. This outside edge is where we want to make that cut so
Yeah.
that those ribs just recess right up in between those
Yeah.
notches.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Okay, and KS Durham asked, with the JKU, you must have the gas tank relocation in order to install the Elite system, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, if you want to do any kind of double triangulated or triangulated 4-link, you've got to have a rear mounted tank.
Okay, we're all caught up on
Okay.
questions.
All right. So again, the tanks come fully assembled. They're serial numbered. They're pressure tested. You can see the hoses are already on there, including the little fittings that we make. That all those little quick release fittings you've got all over your Jeep. We make the actual thing that just pop right in. So that's really handy. It just makes it a lot more plug and play for you guys on the other end. This is a different version, so the coarse thread versus the fine thread.
Yeah, I do get a lot of people that ask, hey, why is the tank model for the 05 and newer more expensive than the 97 to 02 and then the 03 and the 04? And what that is the dash 2 or for your 05 or your 06, the pump ring is completely different. From the factory, it was just a compression locking ring. So we had to build an entire assembly to be able to house the O-ring and then provide the female side to that. So that's what's also adding to the
It's
cost.
just more billet
Yeah,
components.
more billet components.
Yeah.
So, and then one other thing is I get a lot of people that are asking about which can I throw a tank for a 97 into my 04 or whatever the case may be. So those are all great questions. The 97 to 02 and the 03 04 have the same fuel pump, so you can go back and forth between those two. The 05 and the 06, that's where everything changed. The evap system changed, the filler neck, the vent tube, the fuel pump, all that changed. So there is a little bit more flexibility between the 97 and the 04. But yeah, if there's any questions, feel free to just give me a call.
Well,
Yeah,
Tim
and
Chrisley
basically-
said, there's my bearded tech support guy. The tire carrier's finally finished.
Okay, good.
Nice. Yeah, basically, the newer the Jeep gets, the tougher the smog requirements are. All those systems. So, yep. Okay, this is an old picture we took, back at the old shop. This shows you a stock tank versus our tank that's been reshaped to fit a larger differential. This is, like I said, an old picture, and believe it or not, those two are the same capacity. So by us boxing everything out and reworking it, we were able to get.
Yeah, these sharp edges are where you're getting that capacity back. The factory tank is really round and how's this formed, like vacuum formed or whatever?
Yeah,
Or
like roto-molded.
roto molded.
Yeah.
So the edges are really round and you're just killing capacity. So when Tony designed the EXT tank, getting those sharp edges was able to gain all that capacity back and still allow you a 4 to 5 inch stretch on that Dana 60.
Yeah, and if you notice, here's those factory vent valves. We've got them on ours, and that was all how we tied all this stuff in and stay
And these are a Mopar part.
Yes.
So
Yes. So pretty cool.
Gabriel Pyle said, you may have already answered this. JKU, in preparation for future suspension upgrades, what tanks can I install in the rear with minimal mods? What are those mods for each different tank option?
So on a JK, you will have to extend the fuel lines, the electrical, and modify the exhaust because the muffler is back there.
Sure.
Then you need to cut out the floor and put one of these in, which fits right in. And then, of course, the tank now is in there. Like you said, 20 or 25 gallon are the ones that fit.
and this plate is included in every single one of our kits.
Yeah.
So the wiring harness, all the plumbing, and then instructions. So there's really nothing hidden when it comes to buying one of the tanks.
And J-Lock asked, can you race in KOH 4500 class with one of your tanks, or do you need a fuel cell with a bladder?
Yeah, you will need a fuel cell with a bladder, and we're getting to some of that, so we'll get there in a
We don't
second.
technically need a fuel cell. You could use one of ours with a bladder, right?
You
Correct.
could use one of ours with a bladder. You can also use the balls, those things that look like
Wiffle
wiffle balls.
Yeah.
Yeah. So foam.
And Brian Bush asked, what are some recommendations for making sure the fill rate is fast? My comp tank takes forever to fill and kicks the pump off every gallon or two. Andrew said something about changing hoses, but I can't remember.
Yeah. So
That's all about the vent.
yeah. So venting's your friend. Over the years, and I noticed this when I bought my LJ 7 years ago. It was constantly kicking off the pump, and it was a bone stock tank. So I've noticed over the years that the pumps are becoming more sensitive, and what's happening is that the second there's any bubbling whatsoever, that nozzle reaches that reaches the end of the nozzle. I think there's like a little hole in the bottom. It'll kick it off. So generally speaking, the faster you can vent the tank, the easier it fills. So on my LJ now, I actually just increase the vent tube size that goes into the side of the tank. I don't know if we can see that on this tank.
Yeah, like this. So these are CNC machined bungs that go into the tank, and that's what he's talking
So
about.
this is an older tank. So again, with smog and everything, we've had to stick with what came with the Jeep from factory. So on an 06 or an 05, even I think
it's tiny. It's right
start
there.
oh yeah, starting
Yeah.
on like an 03 and newer, this was like a third the size.
Yeah, well, pan over there and show that one. It's
Again,
tiny.
yeah, the newer the Jeep. So this is a JK, same thing.
So now the fill is the size of the vent, and then the vent is tiny.
Yeah. So this wasn't us. This is Jeep. Okay.
Yeah.
So what I did on mine was I increased the size of this by either you can take a little piece of hose and then put a larger hose over that, crimp it all down, and that helps those little bubbles dissipate before it reaches back into the nozzle. And my full throttle, all 26 gallons.
Yep.
Okay, and Rick Turner asked, with your TJ to LJ stretch, do you lose or gain gallons to stretch if you want 115 inches?
You can go all the way to the 26 gallon.
Yeah, you actually can gain capacity with that stretch.
Yeah.
Because we have a tank that's specific for the TJ to LJ
Tracer.
slash tracer
Yeah.
kit.
Yeah. And I don't know if I have we just have the envelope drawings, right?
Sure.
So, like I said, over on our website, when you click on the picture, more pictures open, and you can scroll through, and the envelope drawings are in there for every single model tank. So this is the 23 gallon.
Right.
And then this is the 26 gallon.
No, this
Oh,
is
this is
that,
the Alien.
That's the aliens. Go back to the 23.
Yeah.
So we offer 3 different size comp tanks. There's the 20, the 23, and the 26. This is the 23. This little leading edge, as soon as the tank leaves the skid plate, it leans forward because the axle's not getting up in there. So we made a little bit less expensive model that didn't have all the extra forming and welding. This is just straight up, okay? So that we took that little kick out to lose that 3 gallons, but to also save you a little bit of money. On the 26, it's essentially, if you just drew an imaginary line from this leading edge straight down. So we just kind of just choked that tank even closer to the rear axle
Yeah.
on an LJ that has all that extra room back there. So those are the very, very, very slight differences between that. I think if you took this measurement, 17.11 inches, that would be exactly what the bottom
Would be.
as well
Yeah.
on the 26 gallon
Yeah,
tank.
because when you increase down here, it's all fuel,
Yeah.
right? So,
Jim Smith said, I have a 1990 YJ with an old steel tank. Will your YJ tanks bolt right in, or will I need to make some exhaust mods? Currently, exhaust terminates past the rear bumper.
yeah, if you were to get our standard 20 gallon replacement tank with the skid plate, that will fit right in there. Without, I mean, it's the 7 bolts, and you're gonna have a little trouble getting the other one out with the exhaust there. So sometimes you gotta move the exhaust, like on mine, my little budget YJ. I could not get the tank out without
The factory tank.
trimming the tailpipe, putting the tank in, and then re-welding it. So it just, the way they routed it, just was impossible. Because you've got the filler nozzles on the one side,
Oh,
so you
sure.
gotta move over to get it past, but you can't.
Because you're moving into the exhaust.
Yeah. So it's a little bit of a, but that's the closest thing. That should be, now, I don't know, so on the YJs, they made, this is the module for it, right? Or what they would call the pickup. I think in those older ones, they were just a pickup. There was no fuel pump on it. You could convert to an in-tank fuel pump now when you're gonna change, but that's 100% up to you.
So what's the benefit of that?
Keeps it cooler, and pumps are made to push, not pull. So when you have an external pump, you're just making it work hard, and eventually they overheat.
Or vapor lock or a bunch
Vapor
of
lock, yeah.
Okay, 1800 tow out said, thinking about putting a fuel gauge sending unit in my 19.5 2005 LJ tank. Have you ever seen anyone do this? Any tips?
Yes.
Is he asking about a separate?
He's talking about probably the bubble one, and I do have some pictures
Okay,
of
cool.
that coming
Yeah.
in here, so. Which are, they're common through like Summit and
Yeah.
Jake's.
The company is Tanks Inc. Inc. They sell all different lengths and ohms readings. So whether you have a JK or a CJ or a YJ or a TJ, you can find the ohms reading that's going to be closest to that. Take a quick measurement from the top of the tank down to the bottom and get the one that's just shy of that.
Closest. Yeah. Here's that plate.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So the next picture here is, now the faux cross member's already been cut out, and we did a really nice job, but this is that whole thing that we were talking about earlier.
Right, so this plate, on our website, it welds in to the factory cross member. This is where, the factory shocks, the factory tank bolted in, here. What we've done is just relocated those holes in that hardware 5 inches back so that you can reutilize the factory holes that are already in that rear cross member. Jeep essentially just took a TJ and just moved that cross member back and then added one in front of it.
Yep.
So everything you need to take a TJ tank and stretch it that extra 5 inches that I was talking about, everything's already there, and then you just add that little weld-in plate, and you got that extra 5 inches on
And
top
this
of it.
was on a Jeep Unlimited LJ that we're
Right.
talking about, yeah. So, something, we don't get to talk about this very often, so.
Right.
Kind of a cool thing.
Robert Wheeler asked, so how do you run the exhaust when installing the tank in the rear on a JKU?
Most people just turn it down right in front of the axle. So they would cut it off and put it turned down and done.
Okay, and Chris Lean said 99 TJ, Chris Durham mid-arms on stock springs. Which tank will give me the most ground clearance over the stock tank? I've been shopping yours, but not sure which will work best for my application.
Did you catch on that? I did not.
Yeah, so you're
Mid-arm?
basically just looking for,
Mid-arms
tank
on stock
replacement. So it would be like
springs
our
TJ.
original-
Just the EXT.
EXT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming a mid-arm kit is triangulated. It didn't sound like they said if it was on coil springs or coilovers, but our initial response would be our EXT tank. But if there are outboard coilovers on that system, then you can start looking at any one of the comp tanks.
Yeah, and that gives you extra gallons.
Yeah,
So you can go
and then
23
potentially,
places.
even more stretch down the
Yeah,
road.
yeah.
Okay, and David Law asked, how much room do I gain with the 17 gallon for my YJ?
So that's gonna be, now you're into this.
This exact
category.
tank right here.
Yeah. So, that's gonna give you 5 inches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, depending on what axle, 5 inches will be with that Dana 44, 9-inch.
Yeah.
That size axle, if you're going up to a 60, then you're gonna get 4 inches.
So, but not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Okay, and Caro said 2021 JL 392, thinking to upgrade my axles with Dynatrack. Do you think 60-80 combo is overkill or 60-60 should be enough for 40s and 68 WMS or 72.5 trying to keep the scub radius sharp?
Yeah, so I would do the 60-80 for sure, and I would go wider than 68.
Yeah.
Everything we do is 70, so 72 is pretty far, but you can go, I think on the Dynatrack you can go with the 6-inch backspace wheel, so.
Yeah, huge. And that's the scrub radius that they're talking about. I'm under the impression that on a Rubicon or like the 392, that those axles came even wider from the factory, and I believe those were like at least 68 and a half.
Yeah.
So to buy whether you're a CJ, YJ, TJ, JK, JL owner, to buy an aftermarket axle at stock width is the worst decision financially you'll ever make.
Yeah.
So yes, go wider.
Go wider, for sure.
Josh Nesser asked, is there a universal pickup assembly that can use an intake pump?
No, not that
What'd
I
you-
know. I mean, I guess the only universal one would be like a
Aeromotive.
Aeromotive,
Right.
right? So, and my Aeromotive has 2 fuel pumps in it.
Right.
So that's even better, right? So now if one goes bad, you just flick a switch and it goes to the other one. And we do push that. Like if somebody's gonna replace it and they're a serious off-roader, that's always a great upgrade. It's not cheap, I'll warn you. The Dual Phantom is not cheap, and they're on our website, you can check it out. And it requires an additional adapter plate,
Yeah,
which I meant to grab one and bring it over.
George Keene said, I have a 20-gallon Jeep JK tank. The fuel gauge is not accurate. What troubleshooting should I do? It was installed before I bought the Jeep.
I knew we were gonna get this question.
This little arm just needs to be bent up or down. So if it's reading empty and you still have a lot of fuel left over, you're going to want to bend it down slightly, and if it's the other way, you'll bend it up. It's going to be a trial and error thing.
Which
But-
is part of the reason we always recommend
The access panel.
plate.
So, yeah, there's nothing wrong with the pump. There's nothing wrong with the tank. It's a little cheesy arm that just needs to be flexed up or down to hone that in. And then, I mean, we were just talking about that. I've gotten so used to the mileage. I very rarely pay attention to the needle because the needle's going to move around depending on if you're on an angle, or an incline. I mean, you just park it for a quick bush break, and the next time you turn it on, and if it's at an angle, the thing's going to tell you you're empty, and you're going to freak out. So if you're able to better understand the mileage that your Jeep gets off road, you can confidently
Count on that.
Yeah. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but that little arm is like the equivalent of a coat hanger.
yeah,
And the other thing that I've adopted is just getting used to what that vehicle does, right? Because some vehicles stay on full forever and then they start to drop. Some start to drop right away, but then slowly down to the bottom. So everything's a little bit different, and it's just a simple. It's ridiculous, this little ohm reading thing here. And I know the guy that mentioned earlier, he's going to put in one of those bubble style. Those aren't 100% reliable either. So we've tried those in the race cars and they just fall apart. So it's a crapshoot, and those are not cheap.
Right.
Like you're going to spend some serious coin for those. So just word of the wise on that.
yeah.
Andrew Gardner asked, do you keep the Y pipe and do a single turn down before the rear axle, or eliminate the Y pipe and run another turn down on the passenger side?
Keep the white pipe.
For the
Keep the Y pipe.
JKU, JLU
Yeah,
guys.
yeah. You want to go into a single
Yeah.
and then do the turn down.
Okay, now we're all cut up again.
Okay. So again, all these drawings are on each tank page. So you guys can get under there and take some measurements and kind of figure out what works for you. And of course, we offer a lot of these tanks for the CJ, YJ. Oh, one thing I do want to mention, and maybe it's just easier for me to turn it here. This is actually a CJ tank right here, but when we made the CJ tank, I put in the YJ bolt pattern. So when you buy a CJ tank from us, it's going to come with a blank plate. So if you want to adapt your factory round pickup to this, you can. You just got to cut a hole, put the seal down, and screw it down.
And that comes with the tank.
Comes with the tank. But I recommend, because most guys who still have a CJ have also upgraded to EFI, get a YJ in-tank fuel pump module, drop it in here, and man, or, if you've gone to a V8, something that requires more fuel, and you're still running a CJ, man, you do the YJ pump, and every fuel issue you've had will be gone. So what is hydrolock or whatever, all that'll be gone. So do yourself a favor there. So that's worth mentioning.
I have a leading question. Tony, what's inside every single one of these tanks?
Baffles. So what we do is we put a baffle inside, and then you can see the fuel can run through these little holes. but we want to make sure that the fuel doesn't transfer too quickly from side to side. So that's welded inside each one of these. Then on a YJ or a CJ, we have what's called a labyrinth sump. So this mounts inside like this, and what happens is each time you slosh, it will catch fuel. Now they're mounted this way, right? But I'm showing you so you can see what's going on by tilting them. But normally,
That's on the bottom.
Yeah, they're on the very bottom. And then what happens is your fuel pump sits down inside this, so there's always about a gallon of fuel trapped right there.
Interesting.
So, and then, by the way, in the newer fuel pumps, they built that in. They built in a sump so that it was constantly keeping fuel there. So when you're on an angle or whatever the case may be, it's always got fuel right there. So they some things got worse and some things got better,
Right.
but there's one of the things that got better.
So on these newer pumps, they're internally regulated. I know that.
Yeah.
That fuel's going back into that sump, or where's that fuel going?
So what it's doing is the pickup, which is on this side, right here. So what it's doing is it's constantly just pulling in fuel whenever it sloshes by and keeping that. It keeps about a quart in there.
Sure.
So it's just picking it up whenever it can as it goes by and keeping the fuel right there at the pump. So, if you happen to stab the throttle, and you've been tilted like this, right, with no fuel's going by, it's got to have something right there.
Okay.
So that's how that works.
Okay.
Yep.
And Josh asked, do you all run gas sponge? A gas sponge.
That meaning like the
That sits on the bottom of the tank that can pick up
the Holly one, the
hydromat.
hydromat. I tried one in Terremoto, and then Jordan runs them in his race car because he's got a split tank.
Right.
But since then, I've gone away, and the Aeromotive has an even deeper sump, right? So it's got a big sump on it, and I just use that, and that seems to be fine. And I've got foam in mine because it's a competition tank.
Sure.
So, and we're getting to that.
Chris Goodnow said, I'm running the old 25-gallon tank out of Terremoto in my JKU and love it.
There you go.
I got
Nice.
Terremoto takeoffs on my Jeep too.
Nice. Here now we're showing the factory, that cross member and those shock mounts and everything. So this is our 20 or 25 gallon fuel tank in here to allow for all that. When you go to our Elite kit, it cuts out all this, so you get rid of that, and now you can fill this entire area with a fuel tank, and
Right.
that's how we're
Because
doing it.
the rear shock towers on the Elite system come with a 1/4-inch plate cross member that goes in this area,
And replaces that one.
and then this one can be cut out. So that allows us to occupy all this area next to the frame where the shock mounts used to be. This cross member, all that comes up and pushes out towards the frame rails, and that's how we're getting a
10
ton of extra
10
capacity,
extra gallons.
and it's just a 2-inch height difference.
Yeah, so big difference. Totally worth it in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, okay. So then this is that big tank that's also been converted to a bladder. So this is fast fill, Aeromotive, right? This is the whole 9 yards. This is the actual tank I have in Terremoto.
So this, again, question for me, this is just our 36-gallon tank, and we just cut the top off
Yeah.
and then made a new cover,
Lid, that's
and then
right.
that's where the bladder sits
Goes
in
inside.
there.
And you can see, I don't know if you can see it very well or not, but there's little tabs on this, and that whole filler floats on a rubber bag
Okay.
inside there. And it's not just any rubber bag, they build these for aircraft, right? It's a really high standard and spec, and the price reflects it too, so.
So essentially, any one of our tanks, we could just cut the top off. That top plate could get remade with
Yeah.
that setup, and then
In there,
and the bladder.
yeah.
So does that whole thing have to get sent out to Fuel Safe or whoever okay.
Yeah, we're probably gonna adopt certain models, like a 2054 or a 4054.
Yeah.
That we have a bladder that just fits in there,
Okay.
ready to go, because those are really popular tanks.
Sure.
So, but otherwise, you can send your tank up to Fuel Safe, and they'll build you whatever you want.
Nice.
So, yeah, but we want to have a standard too that we can do that with.
Awesome.
All right, and then of course all these drawings are on each product on our website, right? So you can see all the different sizes. And then of course we now offer the JLU. Now this one only comes with an aluminum skid plate. We're not giving any options. It's an aluminum tank, aluminum skid, foam filled, the whole thing. This also ties back in to the evap system. It takes the factory fuel pump, does all that cool stuff. So again, a complete solution. All the wire harness, the floor plate, the whole 9 yards, all comes with this. So that's really nice. And these are for the factory frame. What are these, 25 gallon?
Yeah, right in that area.
Yeah. So that's pretty good.
Yeah. And then the EXS is 26.
26. Yeah. So we're able to gain a little bit more. And I don't know that we pushed it. That was just, I was happy with 6 extra gallons, and we just stopped there.
Sure,
so.
sure.
And then beyond this, there's the tank out, so you can kind of get a picture of it. And again, you can see that tiny vent that you and I were talking about. I mean, it's still there. So
Yeah, on the JL, the chassis is a lot narrower because Jeep must have been listening when we were talking about outboard shocks.
right,
So the frame's super narrow. So we occupied room underneath the frame. That's what this detail is on the side of the gas tank to get that extra capacity back.
yeah, we actually let the skid plate hit the bottom of the frame, so like if you really land on something hard,
Nothing's
you're not relying on the shear of these bolts. You're like metal to metal, which
That's
is
cool.
which is awesome. So.
Josh Nesser asked, what's the biggest factory location fuel tank you make for gas 3.6 JLU for those overlanders that want to push the distance?
So that's going to be back to this one. This would be it. And what you could do, Josh, it's not a kit that we're offering, but you could put this in and keep your factory tank and then put a transfer pump. And then you'd have 25 extra gallons.
Yeah.
Which,
How big is that one?
that's 25. And then factory's 20. So you'd have quite a capacity.
Yeah.
So, but that would be 100% up to you to make that. You'd have to figure out how you fill this one and your other one, right? So there's some figuring to do. But hey, 20. Yeah, we do have separate fills and stuff too that you could finagle something. Then we've got universal tanks. So the universal tanks are what we call behind the seat tanks, or they sit in the cargo area. This is not what we recommend, but people still do it. Now you're gonna smell gas, right? Like everything about it is putting this into the cargo
Right.
area. So
And if you have kids, don't call me.
yeah, don't do it. So we build a little dam around the fill, so if you spill a little bit, it's contained.
Yeah, it's like on your carpet. And
Yeah, this one is for a YJ or CJ. It's got flanges, and then it takes that YJ. We still use all the factory valves. We still want you to use the cargo or charcoal canister. You got to do all that right. So, and then that's just another view of that one. And then, of course, you can find the drawings for this on that page.
Yeah, different
And then
applications.
this is the TJ one, which is a little bit bigger. And this one, you can see you reuse the TJ pump. Here's that bubble style fuel gauge that we were just being asked about a minute ago. So that tube reaches down, and then there's a little bubble that floats up and down.
because this tank is a lot taller than a factory tank, so you do have to extend the fuel pump.
Yes, which we sell a kit, and this one's already
Right.
been extended.
And the reason I'm assuming, I mean, this is an old picture, I'm assuming this got put in because that tank, or the pump gets extended so far that it just sits on full forever.
Yes.
So
yeah.
get something like that that allows you to actually see the fuel.
Yeah, and this
consumption.
just requires you drill a hole and then do the bolt holes. And there's a little plate that comes up in the bottom with the studs on it, and you just put the nuts on.
Oh, cool.
It's a super, when you got this giant hole to reach through, it's really easy to do. So, and then you just clean out the tank, make sure there's no shavings in there. So this is a really nice setup. This one also comes with, there's a close-up of the fuel dam, a cover, right? Because what we don't want is you to have this in the back and then you're throwing tools and other stuff in there, even a D-ring or something, and damage the top of that fuel pump. So we make this that slides over the top to protect it, and that's a really good thing to have.
And those come powder coated too.
Yeah, they're really nice.
Bo Parham asked, can you do an aluminum skid on the Jeep XJ tank?
No. I mean,
Definitely.
you could make one yourself,
What's
but
funny is those tanks are becoming really, really popular.
yeah,
Maybe it's something we
maybe
talk
we
about.
consider, yeah. I don't know, we've got so many models,
Yeah.
it's just like impossible. But that XJ tank's nice, that's 5 gallons extra.
Yeah, it's 30 gallons, so
Yeah.
I don't know what the factory one was, but 30 and a half gallons is a ton of fuel.
Ton of fuel, so that's
And
nice.
Heaven Guard said, "Hey Tony, what is the reason for the frame sleeves for the gas tank?"
So the frame sleeves, when you, I don't know if we have nothing out here.
No,
I
but
guess
those kind
I
of
mean.
ranges.
So check this out. I know it's a JK tank, but on the front of most of our TJ tanks and some of the YJ tanks, the mounting, the forward mounting point is actually horizontal and that needs to go through the frame. So we provide a frame sleeve so that you're not crushing the frame when you're tightening the hardware down. Now, on like a Jeep like mine, Jeff's, basically anybody that's running outboard coilovers, that hardware generally ends up right in the middle of that shock tower, and you don't need the frame sleeve.
You can just use a regular bolt.
Yeah, because you're going through
Yes.
1/4 inch plate material
Yeah.
and the 1/8 inch frame. It's
Yeah.
plenty.
Yeah, and you can't just use a bolt without the sleeve. You can't get it tight enough. The first time you hit it, it's going to shear that stuff off. So you got to have the sleeve to crank it down. Yeah. This is what we were talking about earlier. So here's a factory CJ
Pick up.
pickup, and it's got the little arm. That's what this stud is there for. There's that blank plate we were talking about. So you just drill a hole in that, and then move this over and run the bolts through, and you can adapt this right there if you want to stay with that. So that's a good example there. And then there's the way it works, right? So you put the gasket down, you put the plate down, and then you keep the O-ring out of that from the factory unit. So real simple. Trust me, if you own a CJ, this will be the simplest thing you ever do. So, and then that's all I had for slides. So, Andrew, why don't you take a look here? I know there was a couple more notes you made about things you want to mention. I wanted to mention all of our tanks come with stainless steel straps. So these are what hold the tank down inside the skid plate. These also get foam lined, and we showed these in many of the pictures that we were showing you. Sometimes they run across and sometimes they run sideways. So it just depends on that. We do have a universal filler with its own little cap and its O-ring. It's pretty nice. And you know, if you're mounting in an untraditional position, it gives you the fill and the vent built right in here. So that's a nice option too. And then the other thing I want to talk about was the fuel pump extension kit. So this one's been extended, and you can see we've lengthened the wires. We give you wire and shrink fit, and then you get new rods, and this whole thing is lifted up. So basically, when you drop this in the tank, if you can follow me on this, and this sits in here, this is what you gotta have. You gotta have it so that the bottom of the fuel pump is hitting the bottom of the tank, and there should be a little bit of pressure on it. So now when we screw the ring on, we know it's touching the bottom. You cannot have that unit suspended in air. What'll happen is, as you are beating down the trail, if it's only held on the top, this whole thing eventually will pop off, yank all the wires, and you're gonna have yourself a mess. So you need to have a little bit of pressure to keep this thing on the bottom of the tank.
I think that's saying it nicely too.
Yeah. So what else did we have there? Oh, we do sell those, the universal
Pump rings.
pump rings.
Yeah, if you have like a fuel cell, like a Jazz fuel cell, you can.
Adapt
Adapt
your
that.
factory style pump to it, whether it's the 9702 or the 0506. We make
Correct.
them both. So
Correct.
we don't recommend going that route, but
Yeah.
for those of you guys that won't listen, there you go.
There's something for everybody. Product liability. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So, you know, this is what I started the company on, right? And basically, I highly doubt anybody else who's dabbled into trying to make tanks like we have has the proper insurance. And, you know, you may look at our tank and go, well, you know, why are they more expensive? Well, they're more complete. You're
Right.
getting plates, you're getting a powder coated skid plate, you're getting all the factory vent valves, you know, stainless steel straps. This is the most dialed in product on the market by far. And all I can say is you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you're not going to find better quality.
and tech support,
And
right?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
So Cool Off-Road said, JKU, will a 36-gallon fit with a Dana 80 with 4-link?
if they have our elite suspension, yes. Yeah. And if he can afford a Dana 80, he can afford an elite suspension. There you go. Do it right the
Agreed.
first time. Do it right the first time. What else did we?
Do you have any
We talked
products
about
for taking off the hard rooftop?
The hard rooftop.
Off-topic question.
Oh, like a crane?
I guess.
There's plenty of those out there. If you just do a search for hard top lift, there's some that like slide under your Jeep and pull it off. There's some where you can winch it up to the ceiling in your garage. Some are mechanical, some are electric, but there's plenty of them out there.
The train
Or a
is
couple of
running late
buddies.
today.
The what?
The train is running late today.
Yeah. I know,
You
it's
always
good.
get what you pay for, Robert Lavoie said. Buy right, buy GenRight is
There
my
you
motto.
go. Nice. Appreciate it.
And most importantly, people want to know where your yellow hat is.
Yeah,
I
that's
know.
the
You
biggest
know what?
question
I'm
of the
sorry.
night.
We were working on getting ready for the show today. I left it in my truck. It's here. But when I heard the countdown go, I go, oh man, I don't have 10 seconds to run to my truck and back. So sorry. I got my yellow cup. Oh, and by the way, we are finally selling these. I don't think that Jamie's got them listed on the website yet, but we've got. He just took the photos and they'll be on the website soon.
Cool.
But they're really nice, really nice. So finally.
I kind of want to do a recap on just
Sure.
all the tanks available.
Yeah.
So I'll just go from top to bottom.
We got about 5 minutes left.
So the CJ guys, we have a 15-gallon tank that gives you 4 to 5 inches of stretch, and we have the 20-gallon, what we call the Enduro tank. It's your stock replacement tank. XJ guys, we got the 30.5-gallon Enduro tank. YJ guys, we offer a 4 to 5 inch stretch, 17-gallon tank. We offer a 6 to 7 inch stretch, 23-gallon tank, and we offer a 20-gallon stock replacement Enduro tank. TJ/LJ guys, we offer tanks that are specific to your year model. Our competitors, the guys that are trying to chase us, they do not. Okay, so 97 to 02 has its own model, 03, 04 has its own model, and the 05, 06 has its own model. Under each of these categories, we offer a 19.5 gallon EXT tank for 4 to 5 inches of stretch. We offer a 15-gallon Alien tank for 8 to 9 inches of stretch. We offer a 20 and a 23-gallon Comp tank for 6 to 7 inches of stretch. We offer a 24.5-gallon Enduro tank, which is your stock replacement tank. And then LJ specific, we have the 8-inch stretch, 26-gallon Comp tank. We have the 31.5-gallon Safari tank. And then, like I had said, with that add-on bracket that welds in, you can get 5 more inches to any one of those TJ specific tanks.
Yep. And what he was saying is every one of those you just mentioned comes in the 3 different models.
Yeah, for the different
And
years.
all of that is for hooking back up to the evap system.
Yep.
The tanks themselves aren't that different. It's all about the evap hookup.
JK guys, we have a 20-gallon standalone or a 20-gallon auxiliary system, so a dual tank system that's totally redundant. We have a 25-gallon standalone. We have a 36-gallon elite specific, and then the two-door guys, we have a 23-gallon, 5.5-inch, 6-inch stretch model, and then the 26-gallon JL, 25-gallon JL.
Yep.
And then the universal tanks that you guys saw. So there's a 20 and a 23-gallon universal in cab behind the seat tank.
And by the way, all of those universal, what we call behind the seat tanks, all come with their own stainless straps. And the reason I mention that is because everybody else welds a little aluminum tab down there and they always break and always leak. This is the right way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the pump rings.
And
So,
pump rings.
if you guys want to build their own tanks or
Yeah,
apply that to
Go to town.
something else, there you go.
yeah.
So that's it for me.
Baffles.
Baffles.
Most of the tanks now you can get aluminum skid or steel skid.
What's the weight difference roughly? I mean, I know
It's a lot.
Yeah,
It's probably 50 pounds.
on average.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you got, you know, we
Depending
got
on the size,
We
yeah.
offer an aluminum tank on that 36-gallon elite tank, and that's
That's-
got to be 60 pounds of
Yeah,
savings.
it's a lot.
So-
It's a lot.
Anthony Paquette asked any updates on the JT tank?
We're still working on it. We're getting there. We're getting there. That's all part of the whole JT frame, JT everything. So, yep. All right. Any last minute stuff? We're right at 6. How about you, Andrew? Did we get through the whole list?
I think so.
All right.
Yeah, I think,
There's a second page there. Make sure we got it.
A lot of thank yous,
Yeah.
informative, great
Okay.
show, thank you.
Sorry, I won't forget my yellow hat next time.
And Craig said Andrew knows his stuff.
He does. He's on the phone all day long.
Hi,
advising
Yancy.
customers. So, all right. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate you watching. This is something we do live every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Facebook and YouTube. Thanks, and I hope to see you local people out at TDS this weekend.
I'll be there.